Hello guys, remember me? I'm Orbital, your Welsh engineer, and welcome back to Kerbal space program Building a Base on the Mun tutorial, part 3, where we're going to build a rover and bring it to our base. Indeed we are. So in the last episode what we did, we built this mining rig, we landed it on the Mun, we also got a scanning probe in orbit around the Mun that will enable us to scan for ore, and yes, we found out that our mining base was in fact over the ore deposit, which was cool. We didn't have to relocate the entire base. By the way, this is in version 1.0.5, but this should work in 1.1 beta if that is what you're using, or any future versions in that case. Anyway, let's go to the VAB and start building the rover. Okay, when you build your rover, I like to build a small rover to start off with. First off, use a remote guidance unit. This is sort of like the place this core is used so you can drive your rover around. Next thing you want to do is a fuel tank. I'm going to attach some engines on this so we can land this on the Mun. But what we want is to house a Kerbal in there. So what I'm going to do is mount the command pod on top. And that's why I put the girder there. I'm going to drop him down a bit. And now let's add the... what are we going to add? I think we're going to add the Mark 1 lander can. Okay, don't forget to rotate the part. Rotate it so the window is pointing at the front. And you can see that makes it awesome that you can drive the Kerbal in IVA view. That's cool stuff. Let's lower that down a bit more. Make it look a bit more appeasing. Do not be afraid to use the adjust tools. And anyway, as I said, that front core is to make sure you can drive forwards, because if you use a lander can, your nav will be pointing upwards. Okay, for the next bit, what we need to do is add some wheels. Now, I like to have my rovers with a wider wheelbase. That way we don't have a high center of mass compared to with the wheelbase on the rover. So what I'm going to do is add some of these girders on the side. Now I'm going to be a bit creative, slightly creative anyway, not huge creative, but I'm going to angle these girders slightly so they're pointing downwards, and we can attach a larger girder on the side here to put the wheels on. Okay, we'll have to rotate this a bit to get it straight, and then use the WASD keys, or you can use the rotate tools to rotate it into place. Now, I don't like the way this is set up. It's, all the parts are clipping, and you can actually see they're clipping. It's not clipping into a solid part. So what I'm going to do is re-maneuver all these parts about until we can get them to look like they're, attached to each other, rather attached inside each other. Okay, that's looking good. Well, almost. Let's put it on. Don't forget you can change the snap angle to smooth or angled. And then place them firmly in place so they look cool. I think that'll do for us. Now, at the back end here, that doesn't look that good. Let's reorientate that again. Okay, up a bit. I think we'll bring him out a bit so it looks like it's attached. That looks good. I think we can do that. Now we're going to attach a strut, because the girders on the back aren't actually connected to each other. On the front girders they are attached to each other. If we don't put a strut on here, they'll just flap around. So that looks like one solid part. They should work as one solid part. Now let's put some wheels on it, and then we can call it a rover. Okay, the wheels are in utilities. Now you've got the large wheels, you've got them, you've got the Rover Max. Now let's place some of these on there. If I can rotate them properly. Okay, they don't look too bad. I can just rotate them a bit more, get the wheel straight. Oh, I keep on hitting the wrong keys by here. Okay, that looks pretty good. They're straight. There are other wheels there though, which is, what are they called? The TR2L rugged wheels. And I think we'll use these. I think they'll look cool. They look like something you'd want on the Mun. So like all-terrain vehicle wheels. Okay, so yeah, we'll use these. Let's angle them straight first. Okay, that looks about right. Let's get rid of these things and just copy that part. Place them over here. try to make sure they're level so your rover stays level. It doesn't matter too much because slight discrepancy won't be a sin as long as your parts aren't touching the ground. Okay, let's attach some solar panels for some power, and I think we'll add some batteries to make sure we have power when the sun is over the horizon. Okay, I think that'll do. What I'm going to do now, you should do anyway when you're building Rover, is test it, and we need a pilot. Ooh, who gonna? I think Lisa Kerman. Yeah, Lisa Kerman, you are gonna be the first Kerbal to test this rover. Okay, yeah, you can see that strut there, and you can see it's wobbling around. It's not connected. Yeah, that's the reason why you have to test these first before you go building a launcher and setting yourselves off to space and dooming your Kerbals for dodgy parts, which they have no chances of surviving with. Oh yeah, by the way, I locked the steering on the back of this rover. I locked the steering on the back because otherwise you'll turn too quickly, and the low gravity on the man, you'll have more chance of tipping over, especially in version 1.0.5. But I think they fixed the rotation of the wheels and everything in version 1.1, so you do not have to worry about it. Anyway, coming back to, now we're going to fix this. Let's get that strut off that bloody girder. Just try to put it on the back. Every time I try to place a strut on a girder, it seems to want to place itself on the inside. Just try again and rotate it around. That is much better. That is what I wanted. Now let's go and test this again. And if this works, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and build a launching vehicle. Okay, here we are, a quick test. Awesome, the struts are where we want them. Let's go back to VAB and engineer ourselves some, I suppose, what we're going to do next. We've got the engines to do, I suppose, for landing the Mun rover, because I want the rover to come down wheels first, rather than land on its back and then tip over, which can cause them all types of problems. If ever you watch my Mind the Mun series, I had one rover which landed on the back, tipped over, and I think at one point the rover flipped over, and it took me ages to get it back. Okay, so what I'm doing here, I'm testing where the center of mass is going to move when that fuel empties. It's going to shift forward slightly because the lander can is heavier than the fuel tank. That way we can plan where these engines go. So let's adjust these engines. Okay, let's place them here, see what we get. Symmetry to 2, do not forget that. It's hard to do, especially since you attached the wheels after. Perhaps you should attach the thrusters first, then attach the wheels later. That makes it easier to plan where the wheels are compared to where you're going to put thrusters. So let's copy that. No. Okay, so after deciding where we're going to put it, I think I'll put it at the front by here. Let's copy that part, bring it at the back. We need them to be equal distance from the center of mass. Now there is a way around that, a way you can do this. Let's set this to Mun, so we know what delta V and thrust to weight ratio is on the Mun. It's going to be perfect for landing on the Mun. Okay, what we can do is reduce the amount of fuel to shift the center of mass forward. That way make it a bit more stable. In fact, there is another neat trick I thought of that we could use to get this center of mass up properly, or the center of thrust underneath the center of mass. So if we put the center of the thrust on, you can see it's off center from the center of mass. That means this is going to flip over. So what we can do, bit symmetry 2 to make sure, right click on that front engine and reduce the thrust on the front engine. You can see the center of thrust moving. In fact, that label's in the way. So let's go over here. And you see the torque on the Kerbal engine redux. Now when I'm reducing the thrust, that is going, it's down to 0. That center of thrust is now exactly under the center of mass. You can do it by eye using the Kerbal tools, but I always love to use Kerbal engine redux because it makes things much easier. Now let's save this. Let's head over to the vehicle assembly building and build a goddamn rocket that'll get us to the Mun. Okay, here we go. Right, now that we're in the vehicle assembly building, what you want to do is load, make sure you choose the spaceplane hangar, load the Rover Mun 1, yeah I know, ingenious name, awesome name, couldn't get any better. Okay, as you saw, it loads up in a weird angle, but as soon as you pick it up, or the main part up, it goes into this side. So let's go ahead and build a rocket First off, we need a stage to detach it from the rocket. Now what we want is a stage that'll get us to the Mun and in orbit around the Mun. Okay, so we're in structural. First off, I want a Rockomax brand adapter, and then we'll go to the fuel tanks. I like to use this one, and I worked out all the delta V beforehand. See, by here we've got 2,330 meters per second. That's awesome for us to get to the Mun and to deorbit us, get us into orbit around the deorbit us, and then we can use the thrusters on the rover to finally land. So awesome stuff. Now next what we have to do is, oh yes, before we go engineer the launch system, let's think about control, because at the moment all we got is the capsule up there. So let's go to the control tab, get the advanced inline reaction wheel, and hey presto, we have extra control, because there's nothing worse than trying to get this over to the Mun and having problems controlling it. Right, I suppose now we can build the launch system, so let's go ahead and get a large Rockomax brand decoupler. Awesome stuff. Now I'm not going to put a fairing around that, because the fairing is glitched. Apparently it can easily flip your rockets out, if anybody's seen my flipping rocket tutorial. Okay, let's get an orange tank. Let's get the mainsail engine, see what we get from that. Make sure it's on curbing. Okay, so we're not going to have enough to get into orbit. We need 3,300 meters per second at least to get into orbit. So let's add some rocket boosters to it. I'm going to use liquid fuel because we can use the asparagus staging if we need more rockets. Okay, the LVT-30 engines, the Reliant engines, are they called? Just add some fuel ducts, see what we get, and stage it correctly. What have we got? 2,750, still not enough. Let's lower these down, add some extra fuel tanks. Okay, we're getting there, so we got over 3,000, but still not there. Let's add, first off, before we copy that part, add struts to it. If you add everything beforehand, then copy the part, all the struts and everything else will be copied as well. Now we need to permit in a different stage, because this is going to be asparagus staging. I'm not going to go into the full detail, well, I'll go into slight detail. First off, whoopsie-daisy, Control Z! Right, first off, you want the first stage to decouple, feeding fuel to the next tanks, and then the next tanks feeding fuel to the center tanks. Hey presto, asparagus staging. And don't forget the nose cones, for aerodynamic purposes. Okay, this should actually get into orbit. Let's add some launch stability enhancers, and I think we can mosey on our way to launch. Oh, in fact, there's actually one more thing I think I want to go through before we go launching, and that is center of thrust. Okay, so now if you look at the torque on the Kerbal Redux mod, you'll see it's slightly off center. That's because the Mun rover isn't symmetrical with the rocket. The rocket is symmetrical with its center of mass and center of lift, but the rover isn't. We've got the command pod on one side, which is going to be slightly heavy on one side. I tested it, it's not going to be very hard to control, but what you can do, now if you're very fussy, which I am, so I'm going to get a decoupler, and what we're going to do is get a small fuel tank, attach it onto the side. Now this is where the mod comes in handy. You can see while I'm reducing this, it's reducing the amount of torque. Now I'm going to get as close to 0 as possible. It looks like 0.2 is the best we can get. Also, let's move this around, make it look a bit better than a fuel tank's just sticking off the side at a weird angle. Okay, that looks good. Okay, we've still got a bit more torque there because I moved it about. Let's adjust it. Okay, yeah, that's good. Okay, that's awesome. Now, what you want is to stage that decoupler the same stage as the rocket we're going to use to get into orbit around the Mun. And that, well, the final stage, I suppose you could call it, before we go land the rover. And that way you can decouple them and they'll just smash into the Mun. You'll have to not worry about any debris. It won't hit your base at all because you're using the rover to land finally. Oh yes, also, other than mods to feed fuel across, you could do things like add a docking port to your rover to attach it to other parts. Some people have used that actually to make bases in the Kerbal space program stock parts rather than using anything else. Anyway, let's go and launch, and I'll meet you around the orbit of the Mun. Okay, so now that we're in orbit around the Mun, oh man, that looks like a little bee or something, or some kind of weird wasp bug. Anyway, as you can see, with the orbit of us around the Mun, we're not over the top of the base, and that's what we need to do. We're at a weird inclination, but never mind, that's because I didn't correct for inclination as I was coming to the Mun. But if you are at a weird inclination, you're going to have to adjust for your burn. Okay, so I've created a maneuver node a quarter away from the base distance if you use a circle, and I'm going to use the burn node. Yeah, this is wasting a bit of delta V, but it's not too much because, like you can see, it's only 130. We've got plenty in the tanks to deorbit ourselves. Right, I've lined that orbit to go over the top of the base. Just double check by lining both sides of that the maneuver node orbit up. Make sure we're heading roughly over the top. We can make corrections as we're coming down. So let's warp to that maneuver, burn that node, and head down towards the base, where we'll either crash or land. Well, I know I'm going to land because I'm an engineer, and obviously I've done this millions of times, so yeah. And if I did crash, I would have edited it out, would I? I suppose this is a tutorial on how to land, not to how to crash, or how my game plane sucks. But no, I did land first time, so yeah, bit boring, no outtakes. Okay, let's go burn this. The burn time is about 5 seconds, so I'm going to burn a bit earlier, but half speed. That makes sure that you can do any fine adjustments. Okay, I think let's accept that. Have a look at the map again, just in case we have to do any slight burns, because there's always a chance that you can not hover over the base. Okay, there you go. See, if we didn't check and we just went down, we'd have overshot the base by a little margin. Okay, so I'm going to check. Alright, yes, the triangle with the sticks coming out of it. Yes, I used the SAS computer to point that way. Let's burn and use the map. Ooh. Okay, we're heading over the base. It's slightly a bit over. We can do corrections on the way down. Now, hit retrograde on the SAS, so we're heading backwards. Now you're going to need to know where you're going to burn. I think what we do by here is, let's set this as a target, so we have the target on the nav ball. Makes things a little easier for ourselves when we're coming in for final landing, rather than doing last minute. There's the target. Right, by here we need to make sure that we're heading towards the target. So what I like to do, hit retrograde on the rocket, try to line ourselves straight up across the rocket, and see where we're going to. See, we're a bit left to the target. So put the SAS on manual, let's turn sideways and burn just a tiny bit. You don't need to do too much on this unless you're really out of sync from your target. Hit retrograde after you burn. That looks pretty good actually. Now we're going to keep that. Now we have to plan on where we're going to burn to reduce our orbit. I think about 35 kilometers. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can either burn to drop your speed below a certain speed, but one thing I like doing is using the map view. Right, I'm going to head to make sure the blue line heads over by these craters. Yeah, I think that's good enough. That way you're not going to undershoot your target, land before your target. Okay, well, we're at 30 kilometers. Let's look at the map again, burn a bit more. So adjust perhaps a bit in the first crater here. Yeah, that looks good. We're coming closer. If we head close to that crater, we can always land on the edge using the thrusters, and then rover on the way to the to the base. So there's no biggie here. Okay, now with this design, right click on the command pod and set control from here, and always point retrograde. Now we can jettison those tanks. They'll head and smash into the Mun, evaporating on explosion and impact, I suppose. Now let's slow ourselves down. Now remember, if you're using this design, those thrusters we have lower thrust to weight ratio, so be mindful when you're coming down. Okay, we're almost coming over the top of the base, slightly over. Hopefully this will work actually. Let's get a bit lower. This is all, you'll have to judge this all by yourself at this time. Let's reduce the speed to about 100 meters per second. Okay, it looks like we might. Whoa, there's explosions there of the of the fuel tanks in the background. Okay, I'm worried that we're going to hit the edge of this crater. But we're going to have to slow down because the thrust to weight ratio of these engines are low. We don't want to clear into this crater. Alright, so another trick I think we can do, if we click to manual SAS, now let's tilt sideways like this, heading towards the target. So we go sideways towards the target, but we also kill our velocity heading downwards. This makes things a little easier. You can then adjust where you're going to land. If you do your fine control, make sure you're not traveling too fast. Make sure you have enough fuel, by the way. Not like in the last mission where we landed the miner, where we just had enough fuel. Always make sure you have more than plenty. I think NASA used a 20% rule. I'm not sure where I heard this from, but apparently they use 20% extra fuel for every stage. Whether this is correct, I don't know. Anyway, we're coming close to the base. We don't need to get too close. So make sure you point in retrograde here. Coming down slowly. This is ideally when you want to feather that thruster control. Okay, let's get a bit closer. Not too fast though. That's the thing with landing. Sometimes it can be a bit tedious. It takes a bit long time, especially if you're doing pinpoint landing. Okay, let's... Alright, now let's hit the brakes on. Stop those wheels spinning like mad. Now what I'm going to do is bring it down at about 5 meters per second. I always suggest to people that you land at about 5 meters per second, because if you land any faster, you have a chance that you'll demolish the parts. I think some of the parts are rated at 5 meters per second. These wheels might be a bit more. Some of the landing legs are rated at 11 meters per second. But anyway, let's feather that throttle, slow. Oh. Awesome landing. Lisa Kerman has landed. And we're ready to go to the base. So let's lock those steering on those rear wheels. I should have done that in the build, but never mind. You can do it whenever you want to. Okay, let's go ahead to the base. Oh yeah, another thing I always suggest. Shut down these thrusters. Because if you accidentally hit the throttle, yes, you will go creeing away and probably crash, find out you ran out of fuel or something. Okay, this manned rover has no real purpose. You could say as a scouting rover that it's exploration. But you could also add things like the small mining rig. You can attach other things like a docking port and use it as a transporter. Or you could, use the wheels as a method for getting your modules to the base and somehow jettison them after you've connected to the base, deploying landing legs to make sure it doesn't fall over or something along those lines. I'll let the creativity up to you, because I've never tried to build a base using just docking modules on the surface of the Mun. It is quite difficult actually, because you have different gravities that when you're building it on Kerbal than when you put it on the Mun. There's slightly different heights because of the springs on the landing legs. Okay, now we're at the base. Awesome stuff. This is our base, the basic base every Kerbal needs. In the next episode, or next part of this, last part, I'll go into mods. So guys, if you like this video, crank that like button like an engineer. I'm Orbital. Trust me, I am an engineer. Bye.